There's this really strange paradox in how we travel today. I mean, we spend 50 weeks a year working ourselves completely to the bone, right?
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
we carefully save our money, we hoard our paid time off, and it's also we can spend our 2 weeks of vacation waking up at like 5 in the morning.
Right. To go stand in line somewhere.
Exactly, fighting these massive crowds, and then we just come home feeling, honestly, substantially more exhausted than when we left. It's like, why do we treat relaxation like a competitive sport?
Well, I think it stems from how we view our free time in general.
Hmm.
We tend to approach travel as this exercise in maximizing return on investment.
Yeah, the whole ROI mindset.
Exactly.
Right.
Because the time is just so scarce and the financial cost is so high, we feel this immense pressure to extract every possible ounce of value from the experience.
Like we have to squeeze it dry.
Right. We basically treat our itineraries like optimization puzzles.
But what if that constant grinding extraction is exactly the thing that ruins the trip?
That is the big question.
It is. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone. Today, we are completely rethinking how we design our travel experiences. We are talking to you, the listener, about making this massive shift from, stressful, anxiety-inducing optimization to a completely new philosophy of intentional ease.
And it really is a profound shift in mindset. I mean,
Yeah.
we're moving away from the dominant culture of maximizing every single second of a vacation, and we're replacing all that exhaustion with a framework that's built entirely around personal energy management.
Yeah, and our guide for this journey is this truly fascinating essay from May 2026. It's titled The Art of Refined Travel, Designing for Ease and Intent.
That's by Roberta Hill, right?
Yes, Roberta Hill, published in her publication Wander After 70. And our mission today is to really deconstruct that traditional, that checklist approach to travel.
Right, the whole top 10 things you must see mentality.
Exactly. We want to uncover how making really small strategic decisions can completely transform an experience from utterly exhausting to deeply, deeply fulfilling.
It's a great piece.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this. Because traditional travel planning honestly feels a lot like cramming for a college final exam.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. You're frantically trying to memorize every fact. You're trying to hit every museum, check off every single must-see on the guidebook's study sheet before the clock runs out.
And you're just totally stressed the whole time.
Exactly. But Roberta's approach is entirely different. It's much more like curating a private art gallery.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like you don't cram the walls with 1,000 mediocre paintings just because you have the physical space for it.
Right, you'd never do that.
No, you select a few great pieces and you give them room to breathe so you can actually appreciate them.
And that curation aspect is vital, especially, when we look at the context of the author, because society has a very specific and honestly often really patronizing narrative about older travelers.
Oh, absolutely.
There's this quiet assumption that as you age, you naturally you just do less.
Like you're giving up or something.
Exactly. The narrative is all about scaling back or adjusting or somehow compensating for a loss of vitality by shrinking your footprint in the world.
But Roberta forcefully rejects that stereotype. I mean, she comes right out and argues that she isn't scaling back at all. She isn't compensating. She is refining.
Refining. Yeah, and refining is a very active, deliberate process. I mean, it isn't about picking a dramatic, dangerous new destination just to prove you still have stamina.
Right. She's not climbing Everest just to prove a point.
No, not at all. It's about the quiet structural decisions that shape how a trip actually feels when you're, standing there in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And the very first thing she does to achieve this refinement is she just drops the checklist entirely.
Completely gone.
Completely ignores the top 10 lists and the rankings of what she allegedly should see. Instead, she begins the whole planning process with just one guiding question.
Which is such a great question.
It is. She asks, what kind of trip do I want this to be?
Let's be real for a second, though. I mean, you fly halfway across the world. You spend thousands of dollars on hotels and flights.
It's a huge investment.
It's massive. So aren't you terrified of missing the one thing everyone says you have to see? Like, if I pay for a flight to Paris, ignoring the Louvre feels like a massive financial waste.
Yeah, the FOMO is real.
It's not just standard FOMO, it's financial FOMO. How does she reconcile the sheer cost of travel with doing less?
Well, what's fascinating here is the psychological trap of what I call the perfect paper itinerary.
Oh, the spreadsheets.
The spreadsheet, yes.
Yeah.
We have all built them. You sit at your computer and you slot in, a morning market tour, an afternoon museum visit, a sunset dinner, and a late night show.
And it looks beautiful.
It looks absolutely flawless on paper, every minute is accounted for, and the ROI looks incredibly high.
Yeah.
But Roberta points out this crucial insight. A trip can look absolutely perfect on paper and feel entirely miserable when you're actually living it.
Because paper doesn't get jet lag. A spreadsheet doesn't get blisters from walking on cobblestones for 6 straight hours.
Precisely. The disconnect happens because the paper itinerary doesn't account for the human animal actually executing the plan.
Right.
When you chase the checklist, you are serving the itinerary. Your needs become secondary to the schedule. But when you start by asking, what kind of trip do I want this to be? The itinerary serves you. It's a fundamental inversion of power.
But, I mean, that creates a massive paradox, doesn't it? If you don't have a rigid itinerary dictating your every move, how do you prevent the trip from devolving into this chaotic, stressful problem-solving on the fly?
Well, that's where her strategy on friction comes in.
Right, the friction. Because paper itineraries often fail in the messy reality of the real world, so Roberta actively designs against inevitable travel friction. And she does this by completely redefining the concept of an upgrade.
Yeah, because when most people hear the word upgrade in a travel context, they envision purely aesthetic luxuries.
Oh yeah, champagne in first class.
Champagne, a balcony with an ocean view, high thread count sheets. But for Roberta, an upgrade is purely functional. Take her flight strategy, for example.
She doesn't just look for the cheapest price anymore.
No, she looks at the full picture of the journey.
She gives a highly specific example of this, actually. When she flies out of Montreal, she often books Air Canada, but rarely because it's the cheapest option on the board.
Right. She books it because the overall experience is significantly smoother for her.
Exactly.
Yep.
She gets direct routes. A checked bag is included through her loyalty card. But most importantly, there are fewer moving parts to manage when something inevitably goes wrong.
And that phrase, fewer moving parts, that is the core mechanism of her strategy. It's not about living in some fantasy world where problems don't happen.
Because they always happen. Flights get delayed.
Weather turns bad, luggage gets misplaced. Her strategy is about having built-in buffer capacity when those problems show up. If you book a cheaper flight with 3 connections on some budget airline, your system is entirely fragile. If one leg fails, you're stranded, but a direct flight on a major carrier gives you a robust buffer.
It's honestly like buying a really great mattress instead of a fancy headboard.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to look at it.
Right, like people spend all this money on a beautiful, ornate headboard that looks great to anyone who walks in the room, which is the shiny destination. But they completely skimp on the mattress itself, which is the invisible thing that actually supports you and dictates how you feel every single day.
Yes. By paying for the direct flight, she is investing in the mattress. She's investing in the invisible infrastructure that makes the trip actually function.
And that invisible infrastructure directly combats what Roberta identifies as the effort trap. Because for a long time, she realized she used to confuse effort with value.
Right. The martyr complex of travel.
Oh, it is so real. There is this incredibly pervasive, romanticized idea that if you figure everything out yourself, the trip is somehow inherently better or more authentic.
Yeah, we convince ourselves that if we, navigate the confusing local transit system.
If we haul our own bags up 5 flights of stairs.
Exactly. If we translate every single street sign with a dictionary, we are somehow earning the experience.
But doing things the hard way doesn't actually guarantee a deeper experience, does it?
No, mechanically speaking, all it guarantees is cognitive and physical depletion.
Right.
I mean, navigating a foreign subway system during rush hour requires immense cognitive load. Your brain is processing unfamiliar spatial mapping, language translation, threat detection, all at the same time.
It burns an incredible amount of glucose.
It does. By the time you finally reach the museum or the temple, your travel battery is flashing red. You're too depleted to actually process the beauty of the destination. You're just staring at the art, waiting for a chance to sit down.
So, by recognizing that, she stops trying to make every trip do everything. She explicitly states that culture, scenery, history, food, and novelty do not all need to compete for her attention in a single week.
Which is the ultimate remedy for the financial FOMO you brought up earlier.
Oh, for sure.
By intentionally focusing on less, she actually absorbs more. Leaning heavily into just 1 or 2 aspects of a destination doesn't make the trip feel smaller or incomplete. As Roberta notes, it makes it feel much richer.
You aren't distracted by the cognitive weight of the 10 things you aren't doing.
Right. You have the biological energy to be fully present for the one thing you were doing.
Okay, so even if you, the listener, have zero interest in visiting China, the architecture of how Roberta built her recent trip there solves almost every pain point of modern travel.
It really is a masterclass.
Let's look at how she applies this abstract philosophy to concrete reality, because here's where it gets really interesting. She wanted to entirely eliminate friction, and China presents massive language barriers and incredibly intimidating internal logistics.
Huge logistics.
So she just didn't manage them. She booked a prearranged group tour for the core of the trip.
And her motivation here is crucial to understand. She didn't book a tour because she lacked the capability to travel independently.
Right, she has nothing left to prove to anyone regarding her travel skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She did it because she wanted unfiltered access, cultural context, and absolute zero friction. She outsourced the most difficult part of the trip.
But she didn't just jump on the cheapest bus tour she could find on the internet. She had these incredibly strict, non-negotiable criteria for this tour.
Very strict.
First, it had to be all-inclusive. Second, minimum 4-star accommodations. Third, absolutely no one-night hotel stays.
That's a big one.
It is. She prefers 3 nights at a minimum in one single place. And, I used to think one-night stays were just mildly annoying because of the packing and unpacking, but there's an actual psychological toll to them, isn't there?
Oh, a massive psychological toll. The mechanism behind that rule is purely cognitive.
How so?
Well, every single time you change hotels, your brain has to subconsciously rebuild its spatial map.
Oh, like where everything is.
Right. Where are the light switches? How does the shower handle work? Which side of the bed is the outlet on? Where did I put my toothbrush?
Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah, that background processing seems minor, but it constantly drains your energy reserves before you even step outside to see the city. So by demanding 3-night minimums, she is giving her brain a chance to idle.
That makes so much sense. She also banned long-haul travel over land, and she allowed no more than 3 early start days on the entire itinerary.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what Roberta's doing is structurally brilliant. She didn't build her trip around the tour.
Right.
She built the structure underneath it by strategically outsourcing the most energy-draining complex parts of the journey. The daily decisions of where to eat, how to tip, how to get from point A to point B. She completely prevented decision fatigue.
She bought herself the luxury of paying attention to the actual country instead of managing the mechanics of being in the country.
Precise.
She bought the structure so she could enjoy the content. And because she outsourced all that heavy lifting, she bought herself a massive surplus of time and physical energy. Which brings us to how she utilizes that surplus.
Unclaimed space.
Yes. She brackets the entire trip with something she calls unclaimed space.
And it is important to note that she doesn't view this as empty time, but intentionally unclaimed time.
Right. It's very deliberate.
Yeah.
Let's break down her bookending strategy, starting with how she protects the edges of the trip, the beginning. Before a grueling 12-hour flight to Shanghai, she intentionally stops in Victoria.
Yeah.
And she explicitly states this is not for sightseeing. She isn't trying to squeeze in one last botanical garden tour. She does it so that when she boards that long flight, she is already traveling.
Already traveling. I love that phrase.
There is no last-minute rush, no spike in cortisol from fighting rush hour traffic to the airport, no panic about whether she left the stove on.
She is essentially building an airlock between her normal, everyday life and her travel life.
An airlock.
Yeah, and the physiological effect of that is profound. Usually we run on sheer adrenaline leading up to a trip, and the moment we sit on the plane, we experience a massive physical crash. The airlock completely prevents that.
She also pays for premium long-haul flights here. And again, she emphasizes this isn't just a splurge for the sake of feeling luxurious.
Not at all.
It is a strategic protection of her baseline energy. If she arrives in a vibrant, overwhelming, chaotic city like Shanghai completely exhausted, the entire first week of her trip is compromised. The premium seat is a direct investment in the outcome of those first days.
She's spending money where it actually alters the physical experience of the destination.
Exactly. But equally fascinating is how she protects the end of the trip. After the highly structured, heavily managed group tour concludes, she books a hotel in Beijing with absolutely zero fixed schedule.
Nothing.
Nothing. No museum tickets, no dinner reservations, no pressure to cover any ground. She decides what to do each morning strictly based on how her body feels that day.
This brings up a critical distinction between real flexibility and fake flexibility.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, fake flexibility is leaving your hotel unbooked in a major European city during the peak of summer, hoping for the best.
Oh no, that's just a nightmare.
Right. That doesn't create freedom, it creates looming anxiety. Your brain can never fully relax because a background process is constantly worrying about where you will sleep.
Right, right.
But real flexibility is what Roberta does with her flights between Beijing and Shanghai.
Because those domestic flights run constantly, practically like city buses, so she just leaves her ticket unbooked.
Exactly the point. She waits to see how the trip unfolds. There's no advantage to locking it in early and a massive advantage to waiting. If she wants to leave early, she goes to the airport. If she wants to sleep in, she sleeps in.
The worst case scenario is waiting an extra hour in a lounge.
Yeah. She uses flexibility only where the system actually works for her, not where it creates a threat.
And the crowning jewel of this unclaimed space philosophy is what she does when she finally gets back to North America. I call it the unfinished masterpiece.
Oh, the drive.
The drive. She lands back in Vancouver. And she admits in the old days she would have pushed straight through getting on another flight to rush home. But now, she stops.
One night in a hotel.
One night, no decisions to make, just enough quiet space to let her nervous system reset. And then she has a 10-day drive back home to Calgary planned. Or I should say, completely unplanned.
It is left entirely unfinished on purpose.
She writes that she didn't fail to plan the route. She actively refused to plan
Oh,
it.
refused? I love that.
The highways she takes, the towns she stops in, it will all be dictated entirely by the weather, her energy levels, and her curiosity in that exact moment. It's the ultimate reward for a trip that was managed well from the start.
This raises an important question, which really serves as the ultimate filter Roberta uses for every single choice she makes in her itinerary. It's frankly the core thesis of her refined travel philosophy.
What is it?
Before booking anything, she asks, will this make the trip easier to be in or harder?
So simple, but so incredibly powerful. Will this make the trip easier to be in or harder?
And she acts ruthlessly according to the answer. The premium flight makes it easier to be in Shanghai, so she books it. The one-night hotel stays make a trip significantly harder to be in due to cognitive load, so she bans them.
And the Victoria stopover makes the 12-hour flight easier to be in because her cortisol levels are lower. It is just a flawlessly effective heuristic for decision-making.
Absolutely.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? How do you actually use this information? Applying Roberta's philosophy to your own life does not mean you need to copy her exact China itinerary.
No, not at all.
It doesn't mean you have to book a group tour, and it certainly doesn't mean you have to fly premium if that doesn't fit your budget or your personal travel style. It means adopting the underlying mindset. It means asking that filter question every time you pull out your credit card.
It's about taking total ownership of the design. Handle the complex, frustrating parts of a trip early so they don't hang over your head.
Right.
Protect your arrivals and departures. Build those airlocks so you aren't crashing on day one. Spend your money and your effort on the invisible infrastructure that actually changes the experience.
Invest in the mattress, not just the shiny headboard.
Exactly. And deliberately leave unclaimed space where it adds actual value rather than just generating anxiety.
Because the goal isn't to build a perfect paper itinerary that looks incredibly impressive on a spreadsheet or gets likes on social media. The goal is to design a resilient trip. A trip that holds up quietly and supports you while you are actually living it.
Yeah.
It's not about doing more to maximize the financial value, and it's not about doing less just because society expects you to slow down as you get older. It's about doing things at the right time.
Well said. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as we wrap up. We have spent this entire deep dive talking about passports, long-haul flights, and hotel bookings. But if we took Roberta's travel philosophy, designing for intentional ease, deliberately leaving unclaimed space to let our nervous systems idle, and constantly asking if a decision makes an experience easier or harder to be in, and applied it to our everyday lives,
Wow.
how would that look?
It's funny, we started out talking about luggage logistics, but that filter question isn't really a travel hack at all, is it? That's a life design framework.
It really is. If you planned your average Tuesday or your typical work week with the same intentionality Roberta uses for a massive trip to Beijing, how would your daily routines completely transform?
Yeah.
What if you intentionally built airlocks between your office hours and your evening at home
Yeah.
so you weren't carrying the stress of workday to your dinner table?
Right, like sitting in your car for 10 minutes before walking inside.
Exactly. What if you actively outsourced the domestic friction that constantly drains your energy, just like she outsourced the internal logistics of China?
Applying the architecture of a refined trip to the architecture of a refined life. Because at the end of the day, whether you are navigating the chaotic streets of a foreign city or just trying to navigate your own neighborhood on a busy weekend, you don't want to feel like you are desperately cramming for a final exam.
No, nobody wants that.
You want to feel like you have the space, the energy, and the quiet intention to actually enjoy the gallery you've built.